It's May 21st, 2026, and somewhere under a hillside outside of Isfahan, Iran, inside a tunnel complex that survived the most intense American air campaign since the Iraq War, there are sealed cylinders of highly enriched uranium. Enough uranium, according to the IAEA and the US government, to build 11 nuclear weapons. Nobody outside of Iran knows exactly where they are right now. The IAEA lost access on February 28th. The inspectors are gone. Iran suspended all cooperation the morning the war kicked off and has not let a single inspector back inside. The IAEA's own Director General called it a profound safeguard emergency. That's a very political way of saying red alert. And Iran right now, their entire focus is leverage, Strait of Hormuz, and if they can get there, a nuclear weapon. Because the regime sees itself fracturing and it wants every card it can hold. Then this week, Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, sits down with CBS, looks directly into the camera and says, the war isn't over because the enriched uranium needs to be physically removed from Iran. And then he says, Trump told him personally, I want to go in there and I think it can be done. That was May 2026. And then Trump himself goes on full measure and confirms it with this. We'll get that at some point. Whatever we want, we have it surveilled. If anybody got near the place, we will know about it and we'll blow them up. So now the sitting president of the United States has publicly told the entire world there is an option on the table to physically send forces in and retrieve that uranium. Now here's where it gets wild. We are technically in a ceasefire, but physically retrieving nuclear material buried under hundreds of feet of rock. Material that's already been struck by GBU-57s during Operation Midnight Hammer, and again during the last several months of Operation Epic Fury. That is a completely different equation. And you can bet Iran is already wargaming exactly what that operation would look like, because their own military spokesperson already went on record and warned about it publicly. So today, we're breaking down where that uranium actually is, how much of it likely survived, how a Delta Force tunnel breach actually works, how SEAL teams would be teamed up with pararescue and multiple special operations units, what the WC-135R nuclear sniffer aircraft is currently doing in the CENTCOM theater, and then we're going to build out the full targeting chain, how all of that air power and special operations muscle would actually come together to make this mission happen. Stay to the very end to get the complete picture, and about 3/4 of the way through, we're going to hit a global roundup covering Russia, China, and the Golden Dome reality check that just dropped on Congress, a $1.2 trillion bill, and we're going to get into all of that. But first, the negotiating table, because it looks like it just burned down again. Every side made their position clear this week, and what it means for what's sitting on the table right now matters enormously, because we know President Trump just posted on Truth Social in the last 24 hours that he was holding off on additional strikes due to potential negotiations involving Gulf partner nations. But that window looks like it's closing fast. And instead, Iran is doing what Iran does. They speak out of one side of their mouth and say they're willing to negotiate, and then behind the scenes, they're moving pieces around the board. Could they be trying to relocate some of that uranium? Iran would never do something like that. But basically, Iran hid enough uranium for 11 nuclear weapons. And the US military noted, we have the address, so let's get into the operational picture. In June 2025, Operation Midnight Hammer, 6 B-2 Spirit stealth. Bombers dropped 12 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators on Fordow. When you need the big one, you bring the massive ordnance penetrator. It makes everyone on the globe feel just a little bit insecure about their underground bunker. GBU-57s were also dropped on Natanz. 2 of those struck the tunnels directly. USS Georgia and USS Ohio guided missile submarines launched Tomahawk. Cruise missiles at Isfahan surface infrastructure. Washington declared the nuclear program obliterated with nuclear dust trapped underground in those deeply buried facilities. But then the satellite imagery came in. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists and the French newspaper Le Monde got their hands on high-resolution imagery of the Isfahan underground complex taken June 9th, 2025, the day before the U.S. strikes. And what they saw changed the entire picture. Large trucks loaded with 18 containers parked at the south tunnel entrance. The timing, the load size, the location, there's really only one conclusion you can draw. Iran moved a significant portion of its highly enriched uranium underground before the first bomb fell, to a different site, a different location. And here's the technical distinction that changes everything about this mission. Fordow got GBU-57 bunker busters, the most powerful conventional weapon in the U.S. arsenal, built specifically to penetrate hardened underground facilities. But Isfahan received Tomahawk cruise missiles. Tomahawks hit surface infrastructure. They do not penetrate deep tunnel complexes built into hillsides. The tunnel network at Isfahan was not touched at depth, not the way Fordow was. And that is the entire problem sitting on the table right now. Fast forward to February 28th, 2026. Operation Epic Fury begins. Over the next 38 days, U.S. forces conduct more than 1,400 strikes. 161 Iranian vessels destroyed. Over 90% of Iran's 8,000 naval mines eliminated. Iran's defense industry set back 90%. Admiral Brad Cooper told the Senate Armed Services Committee, "It will take Iran a generation to rebuild its navy. Conventional military power in Iran is crushed, but the uranium is still unaccounted for." Then, in early April, satellite imagery confirms Iran's next move. Makeshift roadblocks and dirt embankments installed outside all 3 tunnel entrances at the Isfahan underground complex. Iran wasn't burying the problem. Iran was fortifying it, preparing for exactly the kind of operation that Trump and Netanyahu just described publicly. And intelligence sources have since assessed there is a very narrow access point through which that uranium could be retrieved. The Washington Post confirmed the U.S. military has briefed President Trump on a plan involving flying excavation equipment into Iran and constructing a runway inside Iranian territory for cargo planes to extract the material. A mission of a type that has never been attempted in the history of warfare. But there has already been a test run, the F-15E Wizzo rescue. Delta Force, Navy SEALs, pararescue going in to pull that weapons systems officer out, while up to 200 of Iran's best commandos were trying to get there at the same time. And those Iranian commandos were left holding nothing, which tells you everything you need to know about how that operation went down and who walked away. Meanwhile, on the ground inside Iran, the pressure is building from multiple directions. As of May 18th, Iranian authorities have arrested more than 6,500 people for espionage, collaboration, and anti-government activity since the war began. 567 of them connected to opposition groups, according to Iran's own statements. Iran's judiciary has reported 29 executions since February 28th. The UN says 4,000 people arrested on national security charges, subjected to forced disappearances, torture, coerced televised confessions. The new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, taking over from his father, installed by the IRGC. And the pattern is clear. The more hardline you are, the more power you accumulate. It's a competition in extremism. Who arrested more people today? The Ayatollah is keeping score, and that's what's keeping them in power right now. Sun Tzu says, know your enemy, know yourself, and give your enemy off-ramps. Give them the ability to save face. But what does this particular enemy still have? What does Iran still bring to the table as they go more and more hardline? The integrated air defense system is decimated, but that doesn't mean the threat is gone. It means they shift to guerrilla warfare tactics, surface-to-air missile systems concentrated tightly around nuclear sites. Getting aircraft in there is harder than getting aircraft into other locations. Iran reportedly has electro-optical targeting systems, with upgrades, potentially, sourced from China. China said those were cameras, not weapons. Iran said thanks and mounted them on shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles anyway. Roughly 60% of the IRGC's naval asymmetric force survived the campaign, which means their ground-based asymmetric force survived too, because that's the harder problem. IRGC ground forces are intact and actively positioned around nuclear facility perimeters. They're consolidating around the things they consider their final leverage, the nuclear facilities and the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian military spokesperson Brigadier General Zakaria went on record with IRNA this week and said they had considered the possibility that U.S. forces might attempt to steal the uranium through infiltration operations or helicopter operations. Iran has wargamed the helicopter insertion. They studied the Wizzo rescue operation in April. They are mapping how the U.S. goes in so they can adapt their defense, which means the U.S. has to adapt its approach. And then the rhetoric went even higher. Iran announced publicly they will push enrichment to 90% weapons-grade purity if the strikes restart. That is Iran saying on the record that they will build nuclear weapons if the bombs start falling again. The IAEA confirmed Iran's 60% enriched stockpile stood at roughly 440 kilograms as of the last inspection before all access was cut off. And the technical step from 60% to 90% weapons grade is not a long road. Iran fortified a tunnel and called it deterrence. The Nightstalkers Special Aviation Unit just called it a landing zone. Now let's hit the global roundup before we build the kill chain. Story 1. China secretly trained Russian drone operators, and they are now in Ukraine. Reuters dropped a bombshell confirmed by 3 separate European intelligence agencies and documents reviewed by their reporters. China's armed forces secretly trained approximately 200 Russian military personnel at People's Liberation Army Air Force facilities in Beijing and Nanjing in late 2025. The focus was FPV drone warfare, flight simulators, and explosive construction. The training was outlined in a bilateral agreement signed by Russian and Chinese officers in Beijing on July the 2nd, 2025. Those soldiers are now back in Ukraine. Beijing was simultaneously hosting Putin for a state visit while claiming total neutrality in the conflict. Total neutrality. Story 2. The Golden Dome just got a $1.2 trillion reality check. The Congressional Budget Office released its assessment of the U.S. Golden Dome missile defense system designed to protect the continental United States from ballistic missiles, hypersonic weapons, and cruise missiles. The price tag, $1.2 trillion over 20 years. That is 7 times the original $175 billion estimate and 15 times what was actually planned to be spent over the first 5 years. Reality has a way of adjusting budget projections. Now back to the uranium retrieval operation, because this is where it all comes together. This is a multi-layer ISR inner-to-outer complex mission. The advanced drones go first. Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance to map. Everything moving around that site. Fury drones, AI-enabled assets if they can get them into theater, teamed up with RQ-4 Global Hawks operating above the entire battle space. And then there's the WC-135R, Constant Phoenix, one of only 3 aircraft in the entire U.S. Air Force inventory built for exactly one mission: detecting radioactive material in the atmosphere. It carries a directional gamma sensor system that guides crews toward radioactive plumes, and a radiation monitoring and analysis system that detects radiation contact in real time. It has already been confirmed and spotted, deployed to Al Udeid in Qatar and Diego Garcia, both locations perfectly consistent with active nuclear monitoring over the CENTCOM theater. That aircraft being in theater right now tells you something very large could happen at any moment. The WC-135R talks directly to Special Operations Forces. It feeds into a full strike package operating above the objective. F-35s, F-15Es, Global Hawks painting the picture from altitude. The F-35 mission commander, or the F-15E mission commander leading the air stack, has direct access to that RQ-4 data, which flows directly to the Special Operations teams executing the complex insert on the ground. Get to the objective. Secure the uranium. Get it out as fast as physically possible. Multiple sites around the objective get struck simultaneously to suppress anything trying to take down the assets going in, and then that uranium makes its way out of Iran in a way that only Delta Force and the Nightstalkers could architect. The 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Nightstalkers, they execute helicopter insertion missions at a level that no other force on Earth touches. But there are also fixed-wing insertion options from Air Force Special Aviation units as well. The same airframes, the same operators that inserted into Pakistan for Operation Neptune Spear to get Osama bin Laden, the same operators who went into Iran to pull out that weapons systems officer. These special aviation units bring a true fourth-dimensional chess problem to Iran that becomes their absolute worst nightmare, because it strips away one of their last remaining pieces of real leverage. The enriched uranium is gone, and Iran has nothing left to bargain with. So what happens from here? Do you think the U.S. goes in and retrieves that uranium in the next couple of weeks? Let me know in the comments below. Follow on X, follow on Instagram, posting there every day. Click the link in the description and join the Ready Room. And then watch this next video right here. Signing off. The IRGC walks into the Shark Tank. Hello, sharks. We are the IRGC of Iran. We're seeking peace, sanctions relief, full war reparations, international recognition of our right to build a nuclear weapon, and control of the Strait of Hormuz. In exchange, we offer not building a nuclear weapon for approximately 2 months. No equity, no audit rights, no IAEA access. Do we have a deal? And the sharks are just sitting there staring at each other like, this is awkward.